Hello and welcome to the Rise Up with Orion podcast. Thank you so much for joining us for this July 2024 podcast with Dr. John Sanders. We're so excited to have such a professional here today to bring a new topic to our podcast. So let me do a quick introduction and then John, I'll hand it over to you for anything that I missed. So Dr. John is a board certified family physician with emphases in family medicine, pediatrics, dermatology, sports medicine, osteopathic musculoskeletal manipulations, and holistic medicine. He has 4 children and his hobbies include woodworking, pickleball, soccer, volleyball, mountain biking, and I love the end of this, foraging for wild mushrooms. So Dr. John, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, I'm glad to be
Absolutely.
here.
And apparently, for those that have joined the video, you are a musician. There's a guitar behind you, so we should have added that in.
Yeah, we have a family band. My wife and I have been doing weddings and gigs for a long time. And so, yeah, we enjoy that as well.
Oh, see, we'll have to put that at the end. So how Dr. John can show up to your next family gathering. So remember to put that in at the end on how they can hire you. So, Dr. John, I really want to start with learning a little bit more about you. What made you become a doctor, and just a little bit about that before we dive into the brain up top.
Yeah, sure. So, John Sanders, family doc, grew up in a small town in Nevada, like a rural community, little mining town in the middle of nowhere, like 250 miles from the nearest Walmart. And went to UNLV for undergrad in sports medicine. Did athletic training with all the sports teams and stuff. I really love sports. I do all that as well. And then lived in Taiwan for a couple years in between, did like a service mission, a church thing, and then came back, finished undergrad at UNLV, did medical school and residency in Florida. And then my residency was in Jacksonville, med school was in Fort Lauderdale, and emphasis was in rural family medicine. I wanted to be a country doc again and kind of, provide for a little community like what I grew up in. And so from there, we went to Moab, Utah, which is actually a really hip town. I didn't realize how cool it was.
Right. Not so much rural anymore.
Yeah, it's a resort community now. It's wild. Um, but I was out there for 6 years and just living my dream. I was working in the hospital. I had a busy clinic. I was the sideline doc at the football games and delivering babies in the middle of the night. And so, yeah, doing all the things. It was really fun.
Good for you. Good for you. John, what made you want to become a doctor? Has it been something that you've wanted to do since you were a child?
Yeah, I mean, since I was young, I love learning, and I actually thought about being a teacher because I had some really good teachers in my school, and I thought this is so fun, um, and so I just like science. I like understanding things and learning things, and just very passionate about knowledge. Um, and then I heard that doctor means teacher in Latin, and I thought, oh, that's cool. Maybe I'll do that. And there was a chiropractor who would come out to my town. He's kind of a mentor. He was a special forces medic and also a chiropractor. And so we would nerd out, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to college, and the University of Nevada School of Medicine had a outreach program to rural towns. And so, I got to go to just, live on campus at the University of Nevada, Reno, where they had their med school and just check out their anatomy lab and just get exposure to like, what is medical school about? Um,
Yeah.
and so I don't know, I was thinking maybe chiropractic school, physical therapy school, med school. I just knew that undergrad was not enough for me. I wanted more
Mhm.
knowledge and more understanding. Um, and when I got home, I learned about osteopathic medical school from a friend of mine, and I thought, oh, that's like a hybrid between an MD and a chiropractor, right? And
Yeah.
kind of I could do both worlds there. Um, and so yeah, so then I grew up hunting and fishing a lot, and so we would often skin animals and do these things, and so anatomy, physiology was really fascinating for me, and so I don't know. It's just kind of a journey toward healthcare. And I like caring for people and I like people and um, relationships and small towns and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you're definitely, bridging the teacher doctor, bridge today, because you're doing both of those things by bringing your knowledge to teach us a little bit more about, this magical thing called the brain. So let's launch into that a little bit. I loved the topic that you proposed for our podcast today, all about balancing the brain. I know there's so much knowledge. We could talk for 10 to 15 hours on, this amazing organ that we all share. But let us know a little bit more about the functions of the brain. I think most of us have heard, oh, you're a left brain person or you're a right brain person. There's so many different functions that they both have. So let's launch into that a little bit, about what is known about the brain, the left and the right brain, and, what does it really do for us?
Yeah, the brain is amazing, and I think we're still in some uncharted territory with brain research and neuroscience, and the way things work and why. Like, there's a lot of question marks out there.
Mhm.
But as a whole, like if you figure left brain is more of your kind of reasoning and kind of science and kind of that whole space. If you think left brain, right-handed, and maybe people have heard like right-handed people are more logical or
Mhm.
reasoning, all that stuff. And then if you've got right brain is left hand, and left hand more artistic, more emotional, more intuition in that space. And um, yeah, so that's kind of those two centers, and I think a well-balanced mind has a mix of both. And you'll
Mhm.
see more people. Some people like lean more toward left brain, maybe like your accountants or your physicists or rocket scientists. A lot of doctors are very
Yeah.
very left brain, um, and they're very science, very factual, and very that driven. Um, but honestly, regardless of what your profession is and what your emphases are, it's just really important to find that balance and to have like time with your guitar, and then time with science, and then singing and mushroom foraging and working on wood,
Yeah.
and yeah, and just to create that neuroplasticity and that flexibility in our mind is really healthy.
Yeah, and I think, many of us as adults, we talk a lot about, the different brains with children and, are they left or right brain? But as an adult, I mean, how often do we foster that opposite side of the brain because we're usually not comfortable with it? I mean, for me, it's like that artistic part. I have to like pull it out of myself because that's not the way I was wired. But I think, it's really important as adults to allow ourselves the freedom to explore the other side. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we're pretty rigid.
You brought up a really good point, like the way I'm wired. As a young guy, like growing up, like I used to get really mad at those personality tests and things like that. They were trying to tell me I'm
Right.
this and tell me I'm that, and
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? Screw you. Like I can be left-brained or I can be right-brained. Like I
Right.
can I can
Hmm.
change, and I can be both brained.
Hmm.
And my wife is a really good example of this. So she did liberal arts major, humanities. She was English major, and then she even went on to get a master's in that. But she minored in math, piano, and French. And so
Oh,
like mathematics, like how do you minor in mathematics as an English major? It's
right.
because you've
Yeah.
got both sides of the brain firing beautifully.
Yeah.
And I think there was work involved in minoring in math, right? And there's work involved in majoring in English and getting a master's in English.
Hmm.
But that work, although it was somewhat tedious, like you said, like, oh, I got to turn on those brain cells and like actually draw for a minute. Like, ugh,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not, it doesn't come natural.
I'm not
Um,
good at that.
yeah,
Exactly. Yes.
yeah. And whether you say you are or you're not, it's true, right? So like I'm a big believer of breaking down those paradigms and saying, maybe I'm not super gifted in that space, but I'm open to the idea of becoming gifted in that space.
Right. Yes. And being really intentional to try. It's okay. It's okay to try something new. So, Dr. John, tell us why the balance is important. You've talked about, balancing and really finding that happy balance between the left and the right brain. In your mind and in your research and in your profession, why is that important?
I think just life satisfaction. So like if you're hyper left-brained, and you're just like logic, reason, logic, reason. Um, I think it's easy to get stuck in some paradigms there. And then the way that you think tends to be like kind of like a jerk, right? Like I'm just like, this is it. I'm pragmatic and this
Hmm.
is the reasoning and logic behind everything. And that's all that my decision making in life is. Um,
Hmm.
but if you pull in the other side of the brain into some of those spaces, I think it allows for a more balanced navigation of life, um, more life satisfaction in general. In my space, like in medicine, right? Like I think we're super left-brained, right? Like all through
Hmm.
med school, all through residency, like the classes just to get into med
Hmm.
school, they're all left-brain development, right? Um, and so you're just grinding this left brain flex, and so then you graduate and you're just a little bit of a jerk, right? Like you're just a you've
Right.
got you're like, no, this is science, this is pharmacology, this is the pharmacokinetics of this medicine. It's better than placebo. It works, therefore you should do
Do
what I
this.
say
Yes.
because the duh, this is like the left
Yes.
brain.
Yep.
um but as you know, in my career as a doc, like I've noticed there are moments of intuition where like left brain is firing and then right brain's like, you should ask them about this. And then
Hmm.
I'll ask a few more questions and I'm intuiting while I'm being a doctor, right? So
Right.
um so then it becomes much more satisfying as a physician in my profession to utilize both sides of that brain. And it's not like I'm doing energy work or anything like I'm not like, I mean, I love groovy. I love the groovy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that you know, as a board certified family doctor, I have to stick to some degree of body of science and evidence behind
Hmm.
things that I recommend to people and things that I do. But I'm very comfortable saying, gosh, you know, science doesn't have great answers for this. And
Yeah.
so maybe let's try some other things. And you know, I don't know if they're going to work, but let's try it. Um,
Hmm.
leaning into, I don't know, the brain can do amazing things with our health as far as wellness. If we can get it into a state of trust and believing, then
Hmm.
um, then our brains can create health. If we put
Yeah.
a brain in a space of distrust and disbelieving, then it can absolutely create sickness. Like we see it all the
Mm.
time. There's some really interesting research and studies on placebo and the power of placebo, where I believe what this doctor is giving me is going to work. I take it and it works. Or
Yeah.
what this friend gives me and says, hey, this
Hmm.
is going to work. And I do it and it works. Nocebo also works. This doctor like spent 2 minutes with me. They were hustling through. They treated me like a number. They were super left brained and didn't even get to know me. I don't even know, you know.
Hmm.
And so then whatever you give that person is distrusted and creates
Yeah.
nocebo. Nocebo is actually real as well. It's science. And so I think like balancing that right and left brain in healthcare in science is really important just to create trust and relationship so that as we make suggestions or recommendations, although they are science based, they're probably going to work a larger percentage of the time, just based on that relationship. And the fact that medicine is leaning away from that, and I don't know if it's medicine, but or if it's just the corporatization of the healthcare model
Right.
that
Yes.
necessitates this, you know, 5 minute bullcrap visits, you know, and all the,
Right.
I call it the triple B's, the bureaucratic box checking bullcrap, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
it pulls us away from utilizing right or left brain with our clients, right? We're just like, oh, I don't really have time to build relationship, to build trust, to listen, to hear, and to
Hmm.
use intuition in our visit. I just have time for science and a quick, you know,
Right.
diagnosis, treatment protocol, and then move on to the next one. So I think we're largely, you know, at risk a little bit in the healthcare industry if we're not balancing those both brains.
Yep. And I can honestly say, even just looking at, my healthcare network within my little hemisphere that I live in with me and my family, it's unique to find that. Someone who cares about the whole person, including your brain and your emotions and your social network, all of that. It's very unique. Because a lot of the time, like you said, you go to the doctor and you have this problem and they fix that problem, not taking into account the whole person, which is so refreshing that there are people like you out there that are doing that. So thank you for bringing that. And hopefully other people can hop on that bandwagon and ask the questions to create the whole person. I think it's so important.
I love what you said about the social part of someone's life and understanding that. I spend an hour with my clients on their first visit, and I ask a lot of questions about, what are your hobbies? What are your interests? What do you like to do? And what are your just to understand, their background and all that. And it really does make me a better doctor for them. Like it changes everything. It's really, really unique. And I teach medical students year round, and I'm adjunct faculty at a few different medical schools. And we spend a lot of time talking about the art of medicine. And and I say, guys, okay, you saw the science, and you know the science, and you come armed with all this pharmacology knowledge and all these, anatomy, physiology, all these ologies, right? You know all this cool stuff. But what did you see there, right? I'll say, what did you see there that was nuanced, right? And it's very, very subtle. And they'll say, well, I don't know. I only saw this and you did this. And I was like, yeah. But did you see the moment when I paused and I listened and I asked a few more questions? I said, that right there was intuition. I was hearing, not with my ears, but maybe a little heart there, weird. But
Yeah.
and I had a few extra questions, and I was able to dive past the surface level, you know, left brain stuff, get more into the details, and then the answer came. Then the real problem came out, and then we were able to get past it. And I just think that it's really good for my med students to just see that, and I show them again and again and again. I like the art of science, and ideally, I think this should be taught in medical schools. I think med schools are so science heavy. Wonderful, beautiful, stay that way. We want to stay that way. But I think it would be really cool for them to teach an actual class on the art of medicine, and to give
Right.
like vignettes, like little like examples of, okay, well, how can we put more art into caring for people?
Right. Yeah, I mean, something that keeps resonating with me is like relationship-based healthcare or trust-based healthcare. You know, we say it a lot here at Orion, putting the care back in healthcare. And in order to care for someone, you need to, balance all of those things, which I think is so important. Dr. John, how do we translate that into kind of the professional and personal world? You've mentioned a couple things that I'm hearing is asking questions and listening are probably two key things that you will say at some point is how to translate that, not only from the healthcare world, but into a professional and personal capacity.
Just so I understand your question, so how do we create that kind of right left brain bridge in our
Yes,
personal
correct.
lives?
Yeah, to begin
Um,
that balance.
yeah, I think see where we are leaning, and just observe that and say, oh, I tend to be very right brained, right? Or I tend to be very left brained. And then consider ways that you might exercise that other side of your brain. Um,
Hmm.
Sudoku puzzles, or maybe you want to do some art and drawing, take a class at a local university, um, get interested in science, nerd out about, like me, I'm into mushroom foraging because it's super nerdy, but then it's also balanced because I'm in nature
Yeah.
and I'm like breathing and smelling and seeing and
Mhm.
hearing nature as I'm side to side looking for these sneaky little
Mhm.
mushrooms. And
Yeah.
then when I find them, I got to make sure they're not going to kill me. So then I have to be a super nerd and, look up the information and know how do I recognize or identify a mushroom. And so that's a really cool balanced hobby. There are people who love bird watching, there are people who have all these really interesting nature hobbies. And I think nature might be a good balance piece because because you could get so nerdy in looking up all the birds, the species, how
Mhm.
they, where they hibernate and why and how. So that's very, that might be more right-brained, more
Mhm.
science and knowledge, and then the left brain is like being there and experiencing the wonder and the beauty. Um, Keeping ourselves open to wonder, I think, is really good. And wonder is often found in the petri dish of boredom.
Yeah, right. You know what? I was just going to bring up COVID because it was that time when we were like, oh my gosh, now what do we do? Now we're turning to ourselves and our little network. We have to stay safe. So, I mean, I know for a lot of people, as horrible as that time was for many, it kind of opened our eyes to some different opportunities and trying new things, whether it was art or music or journaling or it was very wild, and it's because we had more time to wonder, I think.
Art, music, journaling, all beautiful, beautiful,
Mhm.
beautiful tools to leverage consistently in your life.
Mhm.
Pick up a guitar, learn the
Yeah.
chords. I mean, there's tons of lessons. Ukulele, like start there, like wonderful. Um, I think there's a couple of, I don't know, warnings that I would put out there to folks. I talk about this to my clients and families all the time, and that would be like anything that kills boredom, which we don't have a lot of boredom anymore because we can literally fill thank you, every moment of our day, every second, every minute of potential boredom and creativity, we can fill it with a dopamine addiction hit. And that is show it again. That's that stupid little phone, right? And yes. And so the phones, the screens, the computers, the games, I think we are in a very, very unique time for social science and the development of the human mind and brain. And man, I was in an age, I might be the last of the age, the last of the Mohicans, kind of like where we
Yeah.
didn't have a ton of screens, and
No.
we were like, hey, let's go kick a piece of dirt around and let's go look for rocks and let's, go outside and
Yes,
like engage with things.
exactly.
And I think that the danger of tying up every moment of our time with dopamine is it can kill our right left brain balance, and then we're just being influenced, right? We're
Hmm.
literally, influencers are pulling the minds of our children, the minds of our adults. They're creating polarization. We've seen that in social
Hmm.
media and the polarizing effect of it. They're
Hmm.
creating like dependency, like legit attention
For
deficit
sure.
on all of those spaces. And so I think
Right?
we
It's
had to
so frustrating.
bringing awareness to the things that we're doing to prevent that right left brain balance by killing boredom, by killing creativity. um, Being careful. I think if we're truthful about it, we all have to look at addiction very seriously and
Hmm.
say, how am I addicted and how can I, release from that? Part of the reason I spend time up in the mountains mushroom foraging is because I'm addicted too, right? Like,
Hmm.
can I get away from these things that pull
Yep.
me in such hard ways and just breathe and just connect to nature and, you
Hmm.
know, yeah.
Yep. And as, a parent yourself, and as am I, we are taught that and we're told that to let your kids get bored because that's when the creativity comes out and imagination comes out and all of those things. And it's just so funny because we tell our kids that, but very rarely do we turn the table around on ourselves, to say it's okay to pick up a piece of chalk. That's something that I found that I actually love, is doing chalk art, but it was one of those until I picked up that piece of chalk with my kids and allowed myself to be vulnerable enough to put it on the sidewalk. I never would have known, that was in there anywhere. So again, I don't know why we don't allow ourselves to be bored. It's because of this. I'm reading a great book, and I'm sure you've probably heard of it or read it. Brand new. It's called The Anxious Generation. If you haven't read it, it goes into everything that Dr. John just said. Fantastic book. But again, we're not allowed to be bored, and we are all addicted to technology. And guess what? Welcome to the podcast. We're all on technology right now.
The another book along those same lines is The Coddling of the American Mind,
Yes, same
and
author. Hmm.
same author, and he just did a wonderful podcast with Andrew Huberman, Huberman Labs, about this very topic and the dangers of this. I thought that was the same author. That's why I mentioned that. So
Yep.
beautiful stuff and really, really important. And that guy he comes from, he's a social scientist, PhD guy. And he's just seen one of the things that they mentioned was um, in about from 2010 to 2015 was really
Yep.
when we put smartphones in every hand of every child, and then they saw a 50 to 150% increase in mental illness in teenagers and adolescents,
Mhm.
and there was no other changes at that time. Like, come on, guys! Like,
Mm.
it turns out the Amish were right. We just need to keep it simple and go plow
Just
fields and make
disconnect.
delicious bread and pie and like
Yep.
disconnect and be bored, and it's fine.
Yep. And go find some mushrooms, people. Go find some mushrooms. I'm
Yeah.
just kidding. So, Dr. John, what are some short-term things that we can all do? So, we've talked about, really looking at yourself and trying to figure out where that, I guess, misbalance, unbalance comes from. What are some other short-term things that we all can do to start to evaluate and balance, you know, right now?
I love what you said earlier about just recognizing it. And then if you find yourself angry or unsatisfied or frustrated a lot, like maybe there's room in your sphere for change. And
Hmm.
and I love what you said about vulnerability, like being willing to look inward and just say, you know what? Probably gonna suck at this, but here goes, right? Like I'm gonna pick up
Hmm.
that piece of chalk and I'm gonna go forward and we're just gonna start, and then
Yeah.
you just take it to the next level and the next level and super cool. Yeah.
How does your social network play into that? I mean, is there any value in bringing other people into that to help you with this balancing act?
I think it depends, right? Because personal progression is very personal and various people are on various levels of various things. I do think that if you're trying to grow in a space, like having a mentor in that space is helpful.
Mhm.
Like you want to do more yoga, you want to do more grounding exercises, having like someone who's willing to kind of help you on that journey, but then creating also the self-discipline in the space for you to do that on your own
Mhm.
afterwards, like guitar lessons, right? Like, okay, take some
Yep.
lessons, but still take the time to push aside some time every day to just exercise those brain cells. um, I think that's really, really clutch.
Yeah, for sure. Then I mean, I think, on the flip side, obviously being within the health coaching world, there's also that benefit of, being accountable to someone once you are launching into an unfamiliar space is having someone there to support you, not telling you how to do it and how to do it right. But again, having those cheerleaders, and those relationships of trust, as we talked about earlier, there to support you. And I'm sure that's what you do every single day.
Yeah, I love pickleball. So I play a lot of
Mm.
pickleball too. I have so
Hmm.
many hobbies, it's kind of absurd. But pickleball is very social. They're usually really
Hmm.
great mature groups of people, and it's fun to have like a little community and to build community. Um I have there's a community thing that we have in our neighborhood that we call it like music and the smoke and meat. And so once every couple months we get together and we have like this open, it's not open mic, but it's like open format where the kids go up and they show off their skills that they're taking piano lessons or whatever, horn lessons, and they
Hmm.
showcase their talents that they're doing, and they get an opportunity to just you know display those, and
Yeah.
creating those little cute little community. It's like a little baby talent show every month or whatever.
Yeah.
um Creating opportunities to share some of those talents, those right and left brain talents with each other. I think those are awesome. And so I think just create community around
Hmm.
whatever you like and love and you're passionate around. Like I have mushroom foraging people that we'll go on a foray together, and there'll be three or four or five of us, and we'll just go up into this area. And it's we everybody just kind of goes their own way, and it's fine. Like where there's solitude, it's beautiful. But then we come back together, share what we found, and we talk about it, and we help idea it with each other and stuff. And so I think build community is a big piece of the answer here.
For sure. And to do it in the rough, not via technology either. I think that's also what's so important is you're doing it in real life. Not through technology. I think about book clubs as well. Oh, Ryan, we're a bunch of nerds, that love to talk science. Again, there's that brain side again. And we have an Orion book club, and I bring it to the podcast, once a quarter. So again, there's kind of like the factual science part of it. You can find that community as well. And I think that's kind of where book clubs came together. You find something that you all have in common and bring it together. And, it's actually lovely.
Yeah. And then be vulnerable to explore another thing, right? Maybe
Mhm.
I've done book
Yeah,
club for a while, but now I want to try pickleball or I want to try,
yeah.
something else and be willing to keep exploring. And the brain is super neat. And neuroplasticity, I think, is a thing that we're all kind of striving for. And I think it is a right left brain balance. It's an ability to change your mind, to think differently, to perceive things differently. And emotional intelligence work, I think, is among the most important work we can do with our bodies.
Right.
We talk about exercise, we talk about, eating right, and these really important steps. I'm a, doctor, and I encourage those things too. But
Mhm.
like emotional intelligence work, like being vulnerable, trying new things, developing neuroplasticity, super, super important.
Dr. John, is it ever too late? I know I hear this within my parents and years ago, my grandparents is I'm too old for that. I can't. Tell me why.
Uh, Yeah, whether you say it, it's true or not, it's true. Like
Yeah,
whatever and people get stuck in a I'm too old to learn paradigm, and that's true. If they say it, then it's true.
they're going to believe it.
And
Sure.
in China, they have this phrase that's it goes like this: it goes 活到老学到老, which means live till you're old and learn till you're old. And I think that's really cool. It promotes neuroplasticity. It promotes continue to change and grow and learn as you age beautifully. It does not have to happen. I have so many beautifully neuroplastic older patients who do and try new things, and they're beautiful and it's really
Hmm.
lovely. And so no, I it's a paradigm in our minds that needs to be shifted. And just like the paradigm of someone telling you as a kid, hey, you're very smart at math, but you're not a good reader. Oof, what a damaging thing to do
Ah,
to a kid. It's terrible.
yeah.
And so um, being able to shift off of those paradigms,
Hmm.
super important. Yeah.
Yes. That's funny that you said that because my husband and I just had that conversation that we're not raising mathematicians and I really should just put it back in and not say it. But again, we're still working on it. We're still working on it. So fantastic. And I think, there's a lot of takeaways that I got from it. You're never too old, ask the questions, get out of your comfort zone, be intentional, ask for help. And that's kind of where I want to circle back to. Dr. John, is obviously you are a very relationship based provider. So I would love to know a little bit more about where you're at. Tell us about your clinic. I did a quick introduction. So tell us a little bit more about your clinic and where you're located and how people can get in contact with you.
Oh, thank you. So yes, I started this clinic about 6 years ago. We moved to Utah County, which is like, BYU is here, UVU. There's a new med school that just went in here. Um, so it's a big community. It's a bunch of small townships all together. We started Voyage Clinics about 6 years ago here. We moved here from Moab. My wife wanted to go to law school. So she did a JD MBA. She's smarter than me. And she's the one with the English major as well. So, and a master's in English
Hmm.
as well. So she's just voracious learner.
Got it all. Very well
Yeah.
balanced. Talk about
Yeah.
that.
So I created Voyage Clinics in an effort to fix the broken healthcare system and to be able to deliver the type of care that I believe families and people deserve. Um, so yeah, we're here. We have a couple of doctors, me and another doctor and a nurse practitioner, and um, we have a sleep coach program. We have a health coach program. We have um, holistic family medical care for newborns on through all age groups, and Yeah, it's beautiful. We do a membership model, so we just do like an affordable amount for most families, and our objective is to have affordable, transparent healthcare to our communities. Um, we have about 15 little local businesses that engage with us as well, and so we like that too. And so whether you're an individual family or a business, we're happy to care for your team. Um, yeah, that's pretty much the shop.
So good.
It's great. We spend 30 to 60 minutes with our clients at during their visits. We're not the opposite of the hustle through, thing. And so yeah, that's about it.
Dr. John, what's your website?
Voyageclinics.com,
Okay,
and everything
fantastic.
is like laid out there, services, what we do, price points, all that stuff is all there.
Yeah, I figured that would be a great thing. I will put it in the show notes for those of you that are listening to the podcast today. I'll put their website and the name, obviously, in the show notes. And Dr. John, what if I want to hire you for our next family reunion?
Let's go. Let's
No,
go.
we'll reach out via your website.
Do it, do it. We have a YouTube channel, voyageclinics.com, lots of like really good little informational videos there on all kinds of medical topics and exercise topics and strengthening topics. And we launched a podcast this last year as well with interesting stuff as well. But yeah, there's Instagram, Facebook, we're on all those as well. But I love what you guys are doing. I think you're doing some really neat work in the coaching space. I think it's as important, if not more important, than my job, because you really help people navigate their wellness and really help them achieve some really cool habits and patterns that they can implement. And it's just good work. So kudos to you guys too. And thanks for having me on your podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we support one another for sure, the medical world and the health coaching world. So it's definitely it's a fun little relationship. So Dr. John, thank you so much for joining our podcast today and bringing a little bit more of a holistic look, not only at medical care, but also ourselves. I think that's fantastic. So for those that are listening, I welcome you to come back to our podcast next month. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we are circling back to our Orion Book Club for our August podcast. We're going to be talking about Brene Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart. So pick it up or listen to it. Another fantastic book, going back to what Dr. John said about emotional intelligence. It goes through all the emotions. It's a fantastic read or listen. So we hope everyone will join us then. And thank you for joining the Rise Up with Orion podcast. Thank you, Dr. John, for joining us.
Thanks, Tara.
Have a great day.
Bye.